Hello and welcome to the London Bulls podcast with me, Tom, and as ever, my co-host KD. KD, how are you, mate? How is your summer going?
Tom, really good. Thank you, my friend. Normally, in this period of the summer, I'm really sad because there's no football, but it just feels at the moment like there's non-stop football. It doesn't really feel like the
Yeah.
season's ended. We got the Club World Cup on. We had the international break. Sadly, seeing us get
hmm
battered by Senegal in Nottingham, which is really depressing. But yes,
Yeah,
it's
that
been
was.
very, very non-stop.
Yeah, well, absolutely. And of course, lots of excitement at the moment. There's new signings. Um, we've got the season ticket sales, obviously. Pre-season friendly's been announced, and who better to talk to about all of that than the club chairman, Stig. Stig, how are you?
I'm very well, thank you, Tom. Very well, KD. Good to see you both.
No, it's great to
It
see you.
really
Great
is.
to
You,
have
you,
you.
you sounded like you doubted that, but it really is.
Yeah, well, you've just got to say it, haven't you? You've got to be, you've got to be diplomatic here. Um, how's your summer? Well, I was going to say how's the break, but I'm sure that you haven't really had much of a break.
Yeah, it's yeah. There isn't. I think even I was naively thinking there is a bit of downtime in the summer, but there really doesn't feel like there is. I've also got an 18-year-old son. We're managing through A-level exams as well, so
Yeah.
that's been quite a heavy, obviously the priority for the last 2 or 3 weeks. But we're nearly there now, hopefully. So the staff, I've probably been a little bit AWOL at times because of dealing with, making sure that's going well and stuff. But the staff have been
Sure.
cracking on in the office, and yeah, no, Jamie Griffiths and the others will certainly tell you they don't get much of a breather, to be honest. But it's all good, I think.
Yeah,
Well, we're really
absolutely.
grateful for your time. I mean, this is our third encounter with you. We obviously had you at the Christmas party. We interviewed you just about when you started last year, and yeah, we wanted to just talk about that a bit more. Like, this is I think it's your second anniversary now, actually. And how have you kind of compared the last season compared to the first? Like, how would you compare those two seasons?
Um, Last season was funny, actually. A little. First season, we didn't really have any expectation. So I almost said we didn't really have any hope, but it felt a bit like that at times. But because we were obviously coming from a pretty desperate place, and although on the field we competed really well, and obviously we were still sort of roughly in touch with the playoffs until the last day of the season. I never felt we were never really good enough to be a playoff team in that first season, or we did brilliantly to be where we were. Last year, the way it ended was probably more disappointing because I do genuinely think we were one of the best seven teams in the league, actually, on our, not just on our day, but on, given a fair wind on everybody else's
Mm.
on their good days as well. I thought we were. So that was disappointing. And obviously the way it ended with, back-to-back defeats against Kiddie and Scunny wasn't ideal. But then you then reflect on it actually and you think, well, we'd have taken that on day one, the day we kick off against South Shields, we'd have taken being in that position, wouldn't we? So you don't want to be greedy, but I just think, I'd look at there were one or two games, and it's the same, isn't it? It wasn't about the games probably against Scunthorpe and Kidderminster at the end of the season. We lost to three of the bottom four, didn't we? In reality, three of the relegated clubs, and that can happen, but they're probably the games when where it was kind of lost in the end. But there are if buts and maybes everywhere, aren't there? We could look at refereeing decisions and disallowed goals at Kings Lynn, which still keeps me awake at home to Kings Lynn, which still keeps me awake at night, and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So it is just one of those things. It's one of those things. But it was on off the field. I'm just really pleased with the direction of travel. It was just we just didn't quite get what I felt we deserved on the field at the end of the season.
Yeah, you're totally right. I mean, it was so good in that last game of the season, right? But upon reflection, I mean, there's so many improvements. As you said, we won those real kind of tough games against bogey sides like South Shields on that Tuesday night. And that Kings Lynn went away, unbelievable that. And a really good kind of season for the Hereford women's team as well. Good to see they got
Oh,
promoted too.
Yeah, they were brilliant. I went to their awards night actually Friday before last, which was a really good evening. I was invited along to that. Malcolm, the head of women's football, sprung a speech on me without warning me, so I had to wing about 90 seconds of sense, having had a couple of pints, but that was all right. But yeah, no, they've been brilliant, and obviously their promotion's been confirmed now, so they're really looking forward to the challenge. They needed a new challenge really because they've been too strong for that league they were in previously for both seasons in reality, so they need the new challenge, and I think they're really looking forward to it, and hopefully they're keeping most of the squad together, which is great, so hopefully they'll be able to build again. It'll be really, really interesting to see how they get on, I think.
Yeah, I think it's a big positive as well. Playing a lot of games, obviously, at Edgar Street. Just it allows, obviously, Hereford fans to get behind them, and it shows that the club are behind having that women's team as well. Similarly with the youth team, that sort of development team. Obviously, they haven't been playing at Edgar Street, but there's a lot of young talent in there. Is that something that you want to try and promote? Obviously, that finances, infrastructure, whatever allowing. But do you want to see that develop as well at some point?
Well, it's good thing. The good thing is we're now bringing the women's team and the under 18s team under the control of the club. They've kind of
Mhm.
previously sat in within the CIC or our community arm, simply because that's where they'd been, and also because we had so much to do to try and straighten things out.
Mhm.
If you like, in the senior club, that we were focusing on that. But now we kind of feel we've got a bit of stability and we're moving forward quite nicely. We're going to bring the women's team and the under 18s under a little bit more control of the football club. We still want them to sort of run in the way they have been, but we will have general oversight of them now. We think it's really important that the women's team play at Edgar Street. Not that many clubs actually have their women's team playing at their first team ground, but we think it's
Mhm.
really important. They understand that on occasions we have to turn around and go, actually, you can't play that game on that particular Sunday because of forthcoming first team fixture, or if we've had bad weather, and they're perfectly understanding of that. But I think they really enjoy the opportunity to play at Edgar Street, and long may that continue. We may have an exciting announcement about season ticket holders attending women's fixtures at Edgar Street in the future, hopefully over the course of the next week or so, which is, I think, a big step to try and increase the crowds. We've as a board, we've had some discussions about maybe putting on a special offer for season ticket holders to encourage them along to women's games, which will be great. And the under 18s is quite a complex thing, actually, and I don't know how it's generally understood. One of the big issues we have, and we clearly want to try and develop our own youngsters, and we want to support the under 18s as much as we can. But one of the big issues we have is the level we're at, we can't put a player on a contract until they turn 18. So, for example, if we committed to an academy from the age of 12, for example, and had teams under 12s, 13s, 14s, 15s, 16s, 17s, right the way through,
Mhm.
we could have a world beating 16-year-old who's played for us for 4 years, but we can't put them under a contract of any sort. So any football league club can just come and take them off us, and we get nothing
Mhm.
at all. So we kind of have to weigh up the realities of the investment it would require to run all those teams against the reality of what we might then get in recompense. Now, some people think, should we focus on trying to pick up the best 18-year-olds and bring them into our squad, you know, integrate them into our first team squad and try and build up a profile that way and do that? Or do we invest in the younger elements? It's just very difficult because, how frustrating would it be, taking Jared Bowen as an example? Say you had someone of Jared Bowen's ilk again, and they play for all your teams from under 12s to under 17s, and they're suddenly clearly going to be a world beater, and then your nearest neighbour football league club can just invite them away, and you just go, well, thanks for the 6 years we've just invested in them. There's nothing you can get for it. There's no compensation. It is being looked at, I think, within football to see if there is a way that non-league clubs can be protected, but at the moment it's just difficult. So it is a difficult balance to work out what the investment is. But what we would love is to have more players coming out of our under 18s and joining the first team squad. But the reality is there is quite a big gap between what our under 18s currently play and where our first team is. So we've got to look at
Mhm.
ways to bridge that gap. And if it means, our best under 18s finishing and going off and playing a good level of non-league football, and then coming back to us at 20, then that wouldn't be the end of the world, really. But it's
Mhm.
just a case
Mhm.
of trying to balance. It's not straightforward. Youth football's quite complex, I think. So,
Mhm. Mhm.
but it is something we think about a lot.
Yeah. Well, that's a change I think we'd all like to see is better protection for non-league clubs because, it's we've sort of been left behind a little bit, haven't we? Um, so I suppose just to sort of address an elephant in the room, you've sort of talked about it a little bit in your updates with Jamie and in releases that you have done. Um, there were sort of lots of people talking about season tickets coming out, match day prices, that maybe it was a little bit slow from the club. Now, there's always going to be reasons for that, of course, but what what do you what's what is it from your side that maybe things weren't as quick or you were happy with the release of
Yeah, I think I
everything?
Yeah, I think I acknowledge it was a bit slower than we'd like, but we were in a slightly complicated situation because obviously right up until the last day of the season, we didn't know we could potentially have got promoted. We had it in our minds that we did want to try and freeze prices if we possibly could, because we felt strongly that was the right thing to do after increasing the prices in the previous 2 years. But clearly, had we got into the playoffs and been successful, I suspect we would have had to increase prices
Mhm.
if we were going up a league. So that caused a kind of natural delay in terms of, because in an ideal world, we'd have had season tickets on sale immediately after the last game of the season, or sometimes even in advance of the last day of season while the momentum's good. So that caused a bit of a delay then. And then probably we took a little bit longer than we should have done just to work out the financial impact of freezing prices. We needed to be clear about, we needed to understand how that was going to affect our income across the board. And obviously there was fair bit of work to do on that. Some of it had been done in advance, but you obviously can't predict everything at that point in time. So, I would say we were probably a couple of weeks later than we'd like to have been. But the sort of unseen work that's required is that once you've agreed prices, it then takes 10 days for everything to be uploaded onto the Ticket Co system.
Mhm.
Jamie has manually got to, or Jamie and Emma in the office have manually got to send out all the reservations for the people who had seats last year.
Sure.
So it is a time consuming process, if you like. So it's a bit like, well, season tickets were ready to go on sale 7 days ago, but until you can actually send everybody who had a seat last year their reservation, you can't put them on sale because you can't risk having someone buy a seat that's taken by somebody else. So
Mhm.
yeah, so it was a bit longer than we'd have liked in reality, but for very good reasons. And it was just a little bit complex. But the season ticket sales have been brilliant. I think in the first 7 days we sold as many season tickets as we sold in the first 20 the year before, the
Mhm.
season before. So yeah, so it's gone well, but yeah, we acknowledge it was a little bit slower than we'd have liked it to have been.
You
Yeah,
mentioned
we're at 750 now, so yeah, it's a good number.
online.
Target
I think you
1500.
mentioned as well, like, yeah, 1,500 Tom there. Like, if we were able to sell that number, do you think that would help us kind of go for a promotion challenge? Do you think?
Well, yeah, it's what it does is the season ticket sales are funny because I think I said this last week. The season ticket money comes in, and that's money you're guaranteed clearly because you sold those in advance. So then you can spread all the income from season ticket holders across the 10 months of the season, if you like. So it gives you that solid base to build from, and then it helps you make more educated decisions on where you can spend more money, whether that's on football or whether that's on infrastructure, because you've got the solid base. Clearly, the walk up, if you like, the match day punters are the one that fluctuates, whether you're doing good or whether you're doing well or whether you're doing badly. So that's more difficult to predict. So the season ticket the season tickets are vital. If we could reach a stage where we knew we were going to sell 1,500, it would be amazing because that would give us that really solid base to work from. I think we sold 1,268 last year, Jamie told me. So hopefully if we can beat that this year, you'd like to think we'll be able to after, the improvements on the field. Then again, it gives us that security in terms of our decision making moving forward.
Yeah.
It's incredibly complex, the trying to predict income and forecast incomes, but in a world as mental as football and as insecure and unstable as football. But that's the great thing about the season ticket money. It does just give you a solid base that you can divide across the season month by month to use. It's not like you can get the season ticket money and spend it in August. You need to spread it over the season because you only get it once.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah. So obviously, I mean, I'm just looking at the pictures behind us. To be honest, it looks amazing. I think we do have the best groundsman in the non-league football, don't we? But Blackfriars End, I'm sat in it at the moment, looking out at the pitch. But you've got it behind you, the complete one. I mean, are there any more conversations? Obviously, we've had floodlights going up, but is there any movement on that at the moment? Just any further?
I think at the moment, I mean, obviously, it's sort of in the council's gift, if you like, the development of that end. And at the moment, I think their focus is on, and I think they're due to be putting it out for consultation fairly shortly. They're looking at the Merton Meadow. I don't think it's called the Merton Meadow Master Plan anymore. That was a previous incarnation. But they're looking at the development of the Merton Meadow car park and housing and that type of, and the potential is for the Blackfriars End to be brought in as part of that. So
Mhm.
until they work their way through that process, and I think they've probably got floodplain type investigative work to be looking at. It probably isn't going to progress hugely while that's all going on, but you can rest assured we're in their ear. They know we're here. They know we're waiting. They know we're keen. So yeah,
I could
we'll
probably
keep
save
chipping
them
away at it.
could save them some time with Met and Meadow because it floods. So that's it.
Well, yeah,
That's solved. That solves that problem. So let's stop it from flooding.
you should put an invoice in, Tom, for that. I don't know what
Yeah,
you
that's
could
true.
charge for that
Yeah,
insight. I
yeah,
don't know.
that's right. I'll do it for free, but I'll give the money to the club. There you go.
I had a couple of questions around the decision to go cashless.
Yes.
There's been a few fans that have said that they spend money in cash and things like that, and that will maybe exclude them from purchasing certain things. I mean, what was the kind of reason for that? I know you've touched on it a little bit, but what would you say to those fans who prefer to use cash?
We talked. Yeah, we completely get that there will be fans that can, like to use cash and do use cash, but we get an understanding of how much cash is actually used on a match day. And I think Jamie quoted last week and said actually only 4% of transactions on a match day are actually in cash now. And to actually have floats in every bar and if every customer contact point, I think is probably the corporate wording that would be used in the real world. It's actually quite time consuming and making sure floats. And actually there's work then that is more work than required on a Monday, tidying all that up and making sure everything balances. There isn't any issues around money going missing, but obviously when you're handling cash, that clearly raises the risk of that happening. And I think we just looked at it, and the percentage of cash being used on a match day had become so low that we just felt now was probably the right time to do it. And also, we visited a number of grounds last year where it had gone cashless, and clearly people had, our supporters and home supporters had been able to deal with it. So I think whenever we made the decision, it was probably never going to be popular universally because there are people who, still like to use cash, but I think is inconvenience, but that's the way it is.
I think we lost you there for a second, Stig. However, I think we got the general gist about the cash. No,
well, we missed the chunk, but to be honest, it's fine. No,
that's all good.
It's probably very dull, wasn't it, talking about cashless and that type of stuff. Anyway.
I don't know if it was me.
Nobody wants to talk about that.
I think something also we see is a lot. People say, "Oh, the club don't want to go up, the board don't want to go." When you hear that, I mean, how do you respond? I mean, people say, "Oh, then we're gonna have to go full time." The club doesn't want to go full time. How would you actually respond to when people kind of say stuff like
that? Can I be entirely honest with you, actually? And I will be entirely honest with you. This summer, actually, I have been more irritated by some of the comments than I have in the past, because some of them I have seen some, or I tend not to look at them, but I get them pointed out to me. And some of the comments have been utterly ludicrous, to be honest. Everybody on the board is a Hereford FC, Hereford United fan, long-standing watchers of football at Edgar Street. And all we want more than anything is to get promoted and get out of this, I don't want to swear, this ruddy league that we've been stuck in for any number of years now. But equally, we have a responsibility to look after the future of the club as well. We've now got into a really good position where we've rebuilt our reserves, having been in a pretty desperate situation 2 years ago. They're almost looking after themselves now, which has allowed us, therefore, to release more money to invest in the football this season. We will never... The reality is we can only spend what we earn, and we haven't got an individual putting in extra money to boost the playing budget by 75, 100 grand here to bring in more players. So while it's frustrating, and while me and everybody else would love to spend more money and would love to give Paul an even better chance of trying to get us promoted, we could go and rashly do that. But in 18 months' time, we might find ourselves with 3K in the bank again, or 5K in the bank again. And then where are we? So everything we do every decision we make is taken with the future of the club in our minds, as well as kind of progress on the field. It's so difficult, but people talk about we need investment, and in reality, probably investment would be the quickest way for us to progress or to have a better, it doesn't guarantee anything, does it, investment, but it gives you a better chance. But actually the current model we've got, the sort of fan-owned model, doesn't really allow for anybody to add extra investment. The example I give jokingly is, if I win Euro Millions tonight, obviously this is dated, it might be dated by then, 208 million. I
when you've
reckon
won
I
it,
might
yeah.
I might find some money to put into Hereford Football Club and try and get us out of this bloody league.
Hmm.
But actually, if I'm putting in my money, I probably want to have more of a say in the decisions. I want to have the final say on certain things. So at the moment,
Hmm.
if an investor came forward and was willing to put money in, who's going to put a shed load of cash in if they don't actually have the final say?
Hmm.
So we have to be realistic about the model that we've got, if that makes sense. And that's where it's difficult around the investors. I think Kidderminster have there's some financial figures around Kidderminster today, just as an example, of a team at our level, and they made a loss last year, but they have actually got some private funding, if you like, which helps
Hmm.
them. So whereas if we lost 200k in a year, we'd be in a hole, wouldn't we? So we've got to be really careful what we wish for, I think. But I do get irritated by some of the comments, because I sort of think to just take a step back and try and understand our model, our club, the way we have to be run, and then it's not as straightforward as people see it.
Hmm.
Did that
Yeah, I
sound
mean,
really
talk
grumpy?
about
Did that sound really grumpy? Because I didn't want to sound grumpy.
yeah, but you talk about obviously the model, hybrid is something that's talked about a lot and has been talked about a lot this season, and there's hope that maybe not this season, but into next season, um, it may be something that we look at from your sort of perspective, knowing the figures, and knowing what sort of you can never, as you say, guarantee anything, but what does going hybrid, what does that mean? Not just in terms of training but you know, why is that going to give us a better chance potentially of going up?
Well, I think the key point is it does come back to the football, more contact time with the manager and the coaching staff, with the individual players,
Hmm.
more. You watch football like me, and you can see the teams that have had more time on the training pitch. You can see the patterns of play. I don't know what I'm talking about, but you can see the
Sounds good.
structure. You can see the structure of the teams, can't you? And the shape and the natural, how fluid some teams are, and they're quite often the full time teams, aren't they? Or the
Hmm.
or the or the hybrid teams. So I think that is the key point. Is it would be more contact time for Paul, and that's what Paul would say. How could we improve your life? Give me more time with the players. And
Hmm. Hmm.
that's common sense, isn't it? In fairness, the that absolutely has to be our aim to go try and get to the hybrid stage. What we've got to be careful of is that there's no point just doing it and only being able to do it for one season, because it's and then having to switch back immediately because we can't afford to do it for a second season and a third season. So we have to be confident that we can do that. I would say, we would probably need, from where we currently are, we would need between 125,000 and 200,000 pounds more every year to run a hybrid system, and that's what we're looking at
Hmm.
doing now.
Hmm.
For the past two seasons, when we've had good crowds and good success, you can fund that probably. But if you drop off and you don't have a good season and the crowds drop off, then you've got a big hole, haven't you? So you've got to weigh up all these things before you change it. And that 125k is an example. You're going to have really basic things. You're going to have more training ground costs. You're probably going to have to play the players more because they're committing to 3 days. You're going to need extra training kit. You're going to probably need extra coaching staff because you're going to have more players. They're going to have to be there on 3 days a week. Depending on where you train, you're probably going to have accommodation for players if you're asking them to commit to 3 days. So there's a whole host of things that we've got to weigh up and we've got to balance to make sure that we're ready to make that step. We're determined to try and make that step, and this isn't in any way, saying, trying to pour a negative thing on it, but it's just trying to give an example of, as a board, what we have to weigh up. To say we need to go hybrid is very simple, and I think every single board member, or we need to go hybrid or we need to go full time, everyone on the board would agree. In an ideal
Hmm.
world, we do, but you've got to be able to afford it, and you've got to be able to do it for more than one season, because if you're asking players to commit to hybrid, you might have to commit to 2-year contracts. So you can't then do it for 1 year, can you? Because otherwise you've got a
Hmm.
load of contracts that are null and void for year two if you then change the model. So it's quite complex, but we have to try and get there. That is absolutely that's key.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, something to obviously consider now this coming season is the league, as our manager has said, has probably got harder. Yes, we've lost Scunthorpe going up, um, but you've still got Kidderminster. Fylde have come down. You've got Macclesfield and that train coming up. How do you, yeah, how do you look at this next season? Obviously, it's going to be tough. This is more of a sort of fan question rather than a chairman question. But how do you see this next season? Obviously, getting tougher.
Yeah, I think undoubtedly it gets tougher every single year. It was ruddy hard last year. It was hard the year before, and I think it will be a bit harder this year. But I think our manager is a massive asset. I think he what he's done brilliantly, I think, over his 2 years is he has really placed a value on the club again and placed a value on playing for playing in front of the Hereford public. I think we'd lost that a little bit. I think I said maybe to you before. I think as a fan base, not everyone clearly, but we spent a lot of time looking at what other people had got enviously, and actually had forgotten the special stuff that we have offered to offer players. And I think Paul really has got that going again. I mean, retaining Theo came as a complete surprise to me as chairman, let alone as a fan, because of where he came from. But
Mm.
he absolutely loved his time here. He loved playing for the manager, loved playing in front of the supporters, and he was so keen to come. It was just like
Mhm.
that's absolutely brilliant. And getting someone like Theo, I think, says to other players, other good players, actually that might be a place that I want to be. They might not be able to offer as much as clubs with individual benefactors, but actually they can offer me something else in terms of a football experience,
Mhm.
um, and that's what's really good. But I'm quietly confident. I'm a natural pessimist when it comes to football. I think that's years of being a Hereford fan, isn't it? But
Yeah.
I am quietly yeah, I'm quietly confident that we will be very competitive again, and I'm really looking forward to seeing. We've got a really good, solid base in terms of the squad that Paul's put together so far, and now over the next few weeks, I'm really looking forward to seeing how he puts the finishing touches to what he's got.
Mhm.
What about how tough the National League North is? Stig, I'd just love to kind of get your get your thoughts on what you think of the league above, actually, the National League and the kind of 3-up campaign where they want 3 spots. I mean, are you for that? Do you think there should be 3 spots in the National League now? It's kind of like a League Three now, isn't it?
No,
But
it's a complete no-brainer, isn't it? I don't even see that it's a debating point, really. It should be 2 up. It should be 2 up, and then a playoff place for the teams finishing third to seventh or third to eighth or whatever you want to be.
Mhm.
Whether it will get voted through, I'd be a bit cynical about that, probably. But I think it really should be. I think it's a no-brainer, and I would love, the football league to EFL to be strong enough to turn around and go, actually, this is right, because there are huge assets that have come out of non-league football in recent times, and there are huge assets waiting, queuing up to get into the football league. And actually, at the moment, coming out of the football league, well, we know, don't we? Coming out of the football league feels like the ends of the world, and it feels so difficult to get back out of non-league into the
Mm.
football league. Well, actually, a third promotion place would actually probably lessen the impact of going down as well, or certainly lessen how bad it feels. I'd always feel horrendous, won't it? But at least you go
Mhm.
down thinking actually there is genuine potential to get promoted again. So I'd love to see it change. We fully support the campaign, or as all the National League clubs do. All 3 divisions. So fingers crossed, and we'll just have to wait and see. KD.
brilliant. So, Stig, we've had a few fan questions come in. The first one
Yeah.
we've had is from Chris, who has said, "When are we going to give Paul Caddis the 10-year contract that he deserves?" What's happening with an extension? Is anything happening there? How when can we secure him?
Well, we've had some conversations. Clearly, we've obviously invested a huge amount more in the football budget as it stands at the moment. So that was our commitment to him right now. But I'm sure none of us are in any doubt what a good job he's done. So I think perhaps a 10-year contract wouldn't be apt, and I'm not sure Paul would be willing to sign a 10-year contract at this stage. But we'll see. We'll see what happens further down the line. Can you imagine that, a 10-year contract? Oh, that'd be brave, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Didn't Man
I
United
mean,
give David Moyes an 8-year contract when he signed all those years
they
ago?
gave him a
Didn't they? I
lot,
think
didn't
so.
they? I think Alan Pardew had one at
Yeah,
Newcastle in the
yeah,
8 years or something. Yeah. Well, oh well. We live in hope. 10-year contracts hopefully coming soon.
absolutely. 10-year
Um,
contract,
and
absolutely.
so we've got a question from Neil Davis and some of the other G blockers that he sits with. Just talking about in terms of we've got a lovely traditional proper football ground. But obviously, with that comes sometimes, we think, oh, do we need to maybe have a look at refurbing or doing some work? More specifically, the toilets sort of in the either side of the meadow and the food kiosks. Has there been talk about trying to do some? I mean, things have improved. Don't get me wrong; it's not the wall anymore. But is there any sort of thoughts on what we can do to help spruce it up?
Yeah, we've had various conversations. We have got one or two projects that we're looking at undertaking this summer. It's not straightforward in terms of the facilities we have got on those traditional old terraces and those old stands. It is really difficult, and the reality is probably to have a full proper upgrade will be when we reach the point when we can invest in proper new facilities, including the stand. But we understand it's not ideal, and as much as we all love the old girl. And I mean that in the nicest possible way. It's not perfect by any means, but we're hoping there will be some good improvements this summer with fan sort of enjoyment in mind. It probably won't be all the things we'd like to do because again it costs money. And the problem with the ground is, and we found that a bit with the floodlights, is when you try and do an improvement in an area, you kind of unearth other issues in that area that then require more work on top of it. So we've got to be careful, but we fully appreciate it's not ideal in certain areas, and we will continue to try and do our best to improve it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think we all know it needs a little bit of loving again, the ground. So I'm sure it'll happen. But if there's anyone who wants to help paint or do something, I'm sure it'd be appreciated.
It's that thing. It's that thing, isn't it? We wouldn't swap the look of the ground, would we? Any of it, because we love the way it looks old and traditional and retro. But actually, you would like to have some more modern facilities in around it to make things better.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, so just to bring up this subject again because it hasn't been talked about for a good 5 minutes. It was the 101st anniversary of Hereford United just a couple of days ago. Might have even been yesterday. Um, is there any news again? Have you spoken to Bring Back United? Is there any conversation happening in terms of United?
No, there hasn't been, and for no other reason. And I think everybody just respected the fact that we were fully focused on getting through to the end of the season, trying to achieve whatever. We're not hiding away from it. We know it's there in the background, but we've obviously had to continue to prioritise the here and now. In reality, particularly that last month of the season was absolute carnage, and then that led into a period of carnage after the season when we were then trying to get everything straight. So conversations we've had, I've obviously spoken to Bring Back United previously, and I've no doubt it will come back because there has been that will to talk about it, and we did commit to doing, obviously, to trying to do a proper assessment of costs, etc. And we want to involve Hust and Bring Back United in that, so not that so it's independent, but just so it's balanced and everybody's understanding of where we were. And I'm sure we'll come to that again now things have settled down a bit.
Yeah, I think that's what everyone wants. It's just an adult discussion, and the fact. So yeah, I can't see a problem with
Yeah,
that.
absolutely.
Yeah. So Chris has said, Stig, why is it, we're getting such big attendances and we just can't compete with smaller clubs in this division? I mean, what's the situation? I know you talked about it a bit more in terms of finances earlier, that other clubs have kind of rich investors and things like that. But is it because of things like, maintenance costs of the ground? What is it in your view?
Yeah, it's a number of things. I mean, one of the key points is we're running the club and only spending money that we earn. Other clubs aren't necessarily doing it in that way because they have an individual or individuals who's covering the deficit. So that's really the simplistic way of looking at it. But just taking an example of a crowd of say 2,400, the likelihood is 1,000 of those people will be season ticket holders because we don't include all our season ticket holders, or we only include people who turn up at the game. But you can probably say 1,000 people of 2,400 would be season ticket holders. So you're not getting anything from them in terms of paying on the day for attending the game. So you've then got 1,400 people, probably an average of £10, £11 a head per person, if you take into account the mix of kids and concessions and things. So there you're looking, so you do the maths, you're looking at £14,000 income probably from a home game for tent ticket prices, etc. It probably costs us between 4 and 5k to open the ground. We have huge security costs, which is the bane of our lives, really. But we have a stadium. We still have to adhere to stadium legislation. So we have to have a steward pretty much on every stairwell, for example, where a lot of the clubs we go to, it's like 6 stewards, isn't it? At some of them, if that, and some, I'm sure I'm not always convinced they're fully qualified, to be fair. But anyway, we won't go down that rabbit hole. So there you're sort of already looking at probably only having 9-10 grand take from a home game. We obviously have the bars to add to that and shop and all that sort of income. But then when you've got to pay all the salaries out of that and everything, and if you're only spending what you're earning, that's where your deficit is, and that's not really taking into account any unexpected issues that you have with an old stadium, any run-of-the-mill maintenance costs that you have, and just everything really on it. So it's incredibly frustrating for all of us when you get gazumped for a player by a team that are getting average gates of 450 in some cases. But the reality is, if you've got someone who's just filling the holes out of their own pocket because they can afford to, it doesn't matter to them whether they're being run sustainably or not, does it? It doesn't. Where they get to in the future is a different question. But we are trying to run sustainably, so I get the frustration. And on paper, it looks so irritating, and I've been that irritated fan in the past. But the reality is that's how it works, sadly.
Yeah, and obviously we've got your £1 million salary as well to pay out of
my
out of that.
£1 million salary. Yeah.
But
Don't tell Mrs. Ammons, because don't tell Mrs. Ammons. She thinks I'm a volunteer.
Yeah, well, yeah, this is it. We need to know where this money's going. No, but obviously, I'm sure the club are looking at other ways of trying to bring more money in. How you do that on a match day? I know that the fan zones were quite popular, well received towards the end of the season. Obviously, some big games there. Obviously myself and KD interviewed Sammy Robinson before the one game. But is that something that did you notice a difference in maybe not so much take, but that in people buying drink, food, was that good for the club?
Yeah, it's good. Definitely improves things. And there is a noticeable uplift, and obviously bigger gates bring an uplift as well, clearly. So that, in the reality is the football's the key to everything. If the football's going well, then everything else goes well alongside it. Football fans are kind of odd, though, I think, and I've been guilty as this in the past as a football fan, as anybody. You are creatures of habit. We all have. If you have always had a pub that you go to before the game, you will almost carry on going to that pub. So in an ideal world, we'd love people to come to us at 1:30, 1:45. But the reality is people have habits of where they do. So they only come to us for their last drink before kickoff. And there's quite good numbers that do that in reality. You can't criticize people for that. That's what they've always done. That's where they meet their friends. But if we could, get people to the ground early, it would be brilliant. The shop's been a huge success story over the past couple of years, and we will try and continue to push that. And hopefully with the M&M deal, we're going to have a wider stock and wider choice of stock, which will hopefully help things and can continue to push that forward. And we're always looking at ways to try and just bring in new things. That we obviously did the food and drink festival before the start of the season, in the closed season, which went really well. And we'll always look at things like that and try and do options like that if we possibly can.
Yeah,
I think the dog agrees as well.
Yeah, dog's happy.
Yeah, very much. Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Well, it's been, obviously quite a heavy conversation today. So let's sort of
that's my life. That's my life, Tom. I used to just enjoy being a football. I used to just enjoy being a football fan.
Yeah, well, this is it, isn't it? Well, don't volunteer for jobs then, isn't it? Right. So James wants to know, obviously we talked before when we spoke to you about introducing yourself to Hereford and your first sort of games. But who was your first hero for Hereford? And who's your favourite ever player?
I'm a groupie for central midfielders and midfield players generally. Jimmy Harvey was my first absolute legend. I absolutely adored Jimmy Harvey in the 1980s when I first started watching Hereford, and I flip flop actually about whether he's still my favourite ever player. But I have had a massive man crush on Ben Smith. I absolutely adored
Well,
Ben Smith.
legend.
Everything about Ben Smith. He was class. Football brain was so far ahead of everybody else. I think he is probably my favourite ever Hereford player. I love Richard Wilkins, another midfielder. I love John Narbert way back when. Pablo Haitian. I had a bit of a crush on Pablo Haitian, which used to get me plenty of stick, given I worked at the club at the time. But yeah, I'm very much a midfielder. I'm very much a midfielder. So I think Ben Smith just is my favourite ever player, but Jimmy Harvey was definitely my first love, should we say?
Such a great shout
Yeah.
out, Ben Smith. I recommend reading his book, The Journeyman, if you haven't already. And we'd love to get him on the pod. So if you've got him on
It's a
Facebook,
good
please
book,
just
yeah.
tag him in the comments so we can annoy him until he comes on the podcast. We've had a question, Stig, from Alistair. What's been your
Yeah.
favourite away day as a fan and your favourite away day as a chairman?
Favourite away day as a fan was probably, looking back, it's been tainted by relegation, but I was at Carlisle when we won 3-2.
Oh, nice, yeah.
Adrian Foster scored a hat trick, and then Trevor Wood saved a last minute penalty from Owen Archdeacon. I think that's terribly stato-ish, isn't it, to know all that? But yeah, no, I was in university at Liverpool at the time, and I woke up on that Saturday morning. I'd committed to go into the game, but I had the worst hangover probably I'd ever had, and it's a long way from Liverpool to Carlisle. And I remember got to Carlisle and we had a drink. I can't really remember who I was with, but we had a drink in a rugby club near the ground. And I could feel how green I was. I was so rough, and I got bought a pint, and I basically tried to intimidate it out of the glass, and it didn't happen. And then we went 2-0 down within about 10 minutes. And I remember, and we were on the terrace behind this sort of flat terrace behind the goal. And I remember just sitting down on this terrace with my head in my hands, questioning my life choices, thinking, what am I doing here? 2-0 down, watching this ruddy team who already frustrated me for 15 years, and feeling really bad. And then we then somehow turned it around, went 3-2 up. And then even then, in true Hereford United style, conceded a last minute penalty. And I think at the time, Carlisle were like clear at the top of the league as well. And we were fighting. It was just ludicrous. The whole thing was mad. But anyway, that was that one. And then I think, well, quite a few good days as chairman. But I think Chester away in the first season, when Biscuit scored that goal. Biscuit scoring that goal was utterly ludicrous. I think it was the only shot he had on target in the 18 months he was at the club. So that was funny in itself. But I think it came at a really key time because we'd had a bit of obviously Paul was very fresh into the role, his first job. We'd all experienced Tamworth, which was a truly horrendous day, I think, for all of us. And we really needed a break at that point. We needed a result. And to go away to Chester and score 2 late goals to win the game 2-1. And it wasn't a robbery by any means. We probably deserved to win the game, but it just came at a crucial time. It bought Paul some time, I think, and it just calmed everybody down, calmed me down, and just gave us a little bit of time. And just, it's not as bad as it felt at Tamworth. We just need to give this time. So I think probably as chairman, that was it for the relief, for the relief of it. A friend of mine said that working in football is 90% stress and 10% relief. There is no enjoyment. And actually it is probably like that actually a lot of the time, to be honest, when you're involved.
Do I dare ask why to share his nickname Biscuit? I don't know if I want to know the details, but we'll
Oreo. It wasn't complicated. Oreo Biscuit.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay.
That makes sense.
It wasn't just us. I think he came out of West Brom. I think he already had Biscuit as a nickname when he came out of West Brom. So it wasn't just us.
We've had a massive question coming from Vince, actually. I think he might have mixed you up with Herefordshire FA chairman for this, but he said,
okay,
why do you think walking football in Herefordshire is so far behind other counties in the UK? why are we the only county without a walking football league in the fastest growing sport in the world?
I have
On Stig.
absolutely no idea. I
I
don't
thought so.
know. I have I
I thought
have
so.
I have watched some walking football, and it amazes me, but I don't think I'm even quick enough for that anymore. But yes, no, maybe on the next pod when you get the chairman of the HFA on, or the CEO of the HFA, you might. But sorry, Vince. Sorry, Vince. I can't help you.
I think there was definitely a mix up there
And I
with the
think one of
effort.
my and I've said previously that probably one of my biggest qualities as chairman is I don't pretend I know about stuff I don't know about. So I'm not going to claim I can answer that.
Fair enough. Fair enough. No, that's great, Stig. So two things really. Just to sort of finish this off. Firstly, I think we just wanted to mention about the passing of Bob Graham. Obviously, a legendary sort of Hereford fan, so well known, and to those who knew him, a lot of love for the man. Travelled here, there, and everywhere. Followed the club for year after year after year, and we've talked about, some of the hard times with Hereford, and to still keep going is just, I doff my hat. Obviously, his son, Andrew Graham Adodsey, was chairman, and of course has a massive affiliation with the club. But yeah, I think if you didn't know him, then I'm sure that anyone who did will tell you they wish he had. So obviously, our condolences go out to the Graham family, and yeah, it's we've lost one of our great fans there. So yeah. Um,
Yeah, it was really sad, just really sad to read that, Tom, actually the other day. And
mhm,
what I have to say is, football clubs and football itself is all about the characters within football clubs
mhm.
and within football communities. And he was certainly one of those. I shared a minibus to him. I think I shared a minibus to Spennymoor with him. It wasn't just the two of us, by the way. There were quite a few other people on it, and he was just great value. And with
Mhm.
his pint of Guinness that he supped
Mhm.
religiously, I think. So yeah, you're right. He was, he was one of those characters that you associate with our club, and there are, and it was really sad loss. And you're right, and thoughts are with family and friends at this time.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Um, so last thing I wanted to give the opportunity to say, really, Stig, is obviously we've got season tickets selling really well. We've got a couple of weeks left of the early bird now. What would you say to any fan that's listening today that hasn't bought their season ticket yet, is just and ahhing over whether they want to? Obviously, we all know cost of living is difficult, but what would you like to say to the fans about sort of this next season, and why they should continue to come?
Um, do you know what? I hate talking about season tickets and squad building, that type of thing, because I always feel really uncomfortable, because I've got no right to tell people or ask people to do stuff in reality. Um, what I would say to people is that we'll be doing absolutely everything we can within the club, behind the scenes, and I'm sure on the field, to try and give fans another enjoyable season. I think the last two have been enjoyable, quite
Hmm.
different in some ways, but I think they have been enjoyable. I think crucially, the team that Paul's put on the field in each season has never been found wanting in terms of effort, and that will continue to be the case. I'm absolutely certain of that. We'll try and continue to strive to be the very best you can. If you can afford a season ticket and you can buy one, then I would love you to buy one, because from a selfish point of view, it absolutely helps us in all the way. But I wouldn't sit here and, determinedly ask that, because I just know how tough times are. We're all feeling it, aren't we? And it's the same with Squad Builder, and I try and explain this to people. It's not. I saw a really frustrating comments about 10 days ago. Someone said, here they are, the club again. They've got the begging bowl out. And it's like,
Mm.
that's not what Squad Builder is. Squad Builder is a way of supporting the club outside our regular income. And if you look at clubs like Chester, who are a very similar club to us in terms of the fan ownership side of things, it sits outside those income streams that we talk about in terms of being
Mhm.
sustainable. And if you like, this sounds ridiculous, but it's money that never really comes into the club. It just goes straight to the manager to be spent on footballers. And that's why it's so important to us, because from a budgeting perspective of the club, it doesn't get included and it's just perfect. But like I said, the support we get, we are so fortunate to have the fan base we do. They contribute in any number of ways, even if they're not season ticket holders or squad builder contributors or whatever. I'm hugely grateful for it. I all am. If you can buy a season ticket or contribute to squad builder, please do. But and we will try and do our best to reward you for what you do for us.
Yeah, perfect.
I've never been a very I've never been a very good salesman. I can't give it the hard sell.
No, I think that's absolutely. It's last season thing to go by. Let's push on for next season. So 9th of July is when the fixtures come out for next season. So keep an eye out for that. We will try and get some former players on. We'll try and convince Stig to let us interview the manager again, so we can get his views and yeah, and obviously enjoy the break. Although, as Katie said at the start, there's a lot of football going on at the moment, and it's not that long until the pre-season friendlies start.
Well, I find it really.
It's
I
just
find it
continuous.
really. I find it really. We're talking on a Tuesday, aren't we? As it stands currently, to give the game away to everybody in the wider world. But the lads are in a week. The lads are in a week today. So the lads literally are in for their first training session on the final Tuesday of June, which is just, when you think it does, that Scunthorpe game doesn't feel that long ago, does it? And obviously we've got the open.
No.
We've got the open training session at Pegasus on the, I think it's Saturday the 28th from 10:30 to 12:30. So all supporters are welcome to turn up and have a look at the new lads, the lads that we've got there. And I'm sure there'll be some additional bodies running around as well. Mine won't be one of them. Everybody will be pleased to know, but there'll be people there, I'm sure.
Disappointing. We needed a new striker to go alongside Romain.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, can you imagine?
okay.
We just wanted to say a massive thank you as well for giving up your Tuesday evening. I mean, you, Jamie, and Paul have been absolutely fantastic with your communication, your transparency and honesty. I think the fans really value that, and that's why it's created such a fantastic kind of couple of years actually, and why there's a lot of momentum around the club at the moment and a lot of buy-in to what you're all doing. So keep up the fantastic work, and I hope you do get some rest in between now and when training kicks off. But yeah, thank you for everything you've done for us as well as a group.
No problem. Pleasure.
Yeah,
Cool.
I'd echo that.
Most of the time.
Yeah, well, sometimes it's a bit tough, but don't worry about that. Any relationship's tough, isn't it? So, you're gonna have your up moments, your downs. Not with us personally, by the way. You've always been good to us. But there you go. But no, thank you very much, Stig.
Pleasure.
Cheers, KD, as well, of course.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening. Most importantly, not long, hopefully, till we'll be back again. But if nothing else, up the balls, 10 more years, Paul Caddis, and let's all enjoy this close season and the new season when it comes around. Cheers, everybody. Thank you.